Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana.
Well, how y'all doing? I sure am honored to make another video for you. I really enjoy this, and I just want to tell you, if you enjoy my videos, please share them with your friends and ask them to subscribe also. Help the old man's channel grow. Want to warn you ahead of time. Now, this video may drag on because I'm telling a story, and like I may have said before, I'm doing this primarily for my grandchildren, so maybe they can, get to see what old Pawpaw was like, and maybe I can tell a few funny stories along the way, and they sort of get to know me. But it's also stories I'm wanting to share with you, the general public, in the event you're considering vacationing somewhere. I want to share the places I've been and the things I've done with you, and maybe to benefit you. Maybe you can learn from a mistake I might have made, or something that I did that you said, hell, I don't ever want to go through that. Anyway, this is episode 2 of, I think there were 7 trips to Mexico. I'm not sure. Anyway, I ended episode 1 talking about getting back on the airplane after 3 tries. But what I forgot to tell you about is right about that same time, they were having the tequila festival. They call it Festival de Tequila. They were having a tequila festival in Arandas, and they had these huge tents set up, and where you would go into a county fair, and there would be this little booth, a bunch of little booths set up, people displaying their wares or whatever. These folks were displaying their tequila, and they had these little plastic medicine cups, like if a nurse was to bring you a couple of pills, it'd be a little cup, Well, they had them little plastic cups there, and fill them about halfway full, and you just sample their tequila. They want you to try their tequila, because man, if you like their tequila, maybe you buy it. Well, yeah, there's about 37 of them in there. And I'll have you know, I tried every damn one of them. And I went back to about the second one I tried. And I said, could I try yours one more time? I said, sure. And I tasted it and I said, yep. I said, yours is the best. I said, everybody else's tastes like gasoline compared to yours. And that tequila was Don Nacho, D-O-N N-A-C-H-O, Don Nacho. I think I heard that it's available in California now. But Don Nacho tequila, man, was that stuff good. And I told him, I said, man, you need to have the word peligroso on the bottle. Peligroso means dangerous, because it was so smooth. Anyway, I wanted to relate that to you because that was during my first trip there. So anyway, my wife and I came home, and there was a Mexican friend of mine who was working here at the local restaurant, and he said, Bob, is there any way you could help me out? And I said, well, what do you need, buddy? He said, would you be willing to sponsor my wife on a work visa? And I want you to hear what I just said. Sponsor her on a work visa. We're talking about coming here legally, not illegally, but legally. Going to the American consulate, the whole deal. And I said, man, I'd be happy to. And so we made contact with the consulate and got all the paperwork in order, everything we needed, every freaking thing we needed. Now, I didn't speak Spanish. Or the shit. I knew a little bit, and I had a book. And I noticed that in Mexico they drive on the same side of the road as we do. I mean, hell, I've driven in London, England. I figure, hell, I can drive in Mexico. Same, basically, all the traffic regulations or signs and all that are pretty much the same, except they're four-way stop. Now, here in the United States, we come up to a four-way stop and it says, you know, stop. And you look both ways, three ways, whatever, and then you proceed. Their four-way stops say uno y uno, one by one. And they're just a suggestion. You know, you might want to stop, you might not. And my God, they run them damn things left and right. I mean, now if it's a real blind corner, you might slow down a little bit, but that's it. I mean, zoom, zoom, zoom. And you know what, the whole time, all the times I've been in Mexico, I've never seen an accident. I've never seen a wreck. And it's crazy. But people are respectful of other drivers down there, whereas here, you know, Americans think that they own the road, it's their road. What are you doing driving on my highway, you know, or, you know, my street? And in Mexico, they're a lot more considerate of the other driver. But anyhow, I make arrangements with, I forget what airline it was, but it was the one that had given me and the wife all them vouchers. So I got me a round trip ticket, and I got his wife a one-way ticket. And I fly to Mexico. And I had made arrangements for rental car through, oh, I forget which one it was, but it was one of them cheap, you know, money-saving rental car places. And they had an office right by the airport there in Guadalajara. So I fly into Guadalajara by myself. Don't speak the language worth a darn. And I only got one small bag. I mean, hell, I ain't carrying a bunch of damn luggage. As long as I got clean underwear and socks, what more do I need? So I clear through customs and I go out and I had a sign there, you know, if you're supposed to get a rental car, you know, you'll dial this number, whatever. So I dial a number and a shuttle comes up from the rental car place. Little did I know, it's just about a block over there. I could walk. But anyway, it might have been Payless or something like that. Anyway, it was one of the, like I say, discount car rental places. And I told them, you know, as expensive as gasoline is, I told them, I said, I just want an economical car. And that's what I did online. And I ended up with a Mexican version of the Nissan Sentra. Basically a Nissan Sentra without all the safety features. And I didn't want no big car. I mean, if you've seen them little narrow ass streets down there, you'd understand. And hell, they still build Volkswagen Beetles down there. And that's what they use a lot for taxi cabs. So, you want a small car. And you don't see that many big trucks on the highway anyhow. Not on the road you got to pay for anyway. Of course, you can get on the free road and it's, boy, they're rough as a cob. But if you want to be on a nice highway, you got to pay a toll. So I get my car and I drive into downtown Guadalajara and I meet my buddy's wife and her mother and the girls and her two daughters, the wife's two daughters, my buddy's daughters. And we you know, get to know one another best we can. And her daddy or her mama's boyfriend, I really didn't get the gist of it. Anyway, we go to a local restaurant there and we eat. And I couldn't help it. I had to call my buddy back home that had first taken me, and I said, "You ain't gonna believe where in the hell I'm at." He says, "Where you at?" And I just handed the phone to the waitress. Come find out it was my buddy's favorite restaurant in Guadalajara. But we had our meal, we got to know each other, and we agreed that we would meet the next day at the American consulate, just outside the doors of the American consulate. So I drive to Arandas, which is about an hour and 40 minutes away, and I'm staying with my buddy's parents, I think. Or I might have stayed at a motel that night because I had to get up early the next morning, but regardless. The next day I drive to the consulate, and me and the girl go in there, and when we go in, I have to pay, I forget, $100, $200, whatever it was, the application fee, plus our sheaf of papers we had. They told her, well, your daughters can go too, and be another $100. So she pays up another $100. So the consulate got $200 right up front. 200 non-refundable dollars. And we sat patiently, wait our turn. When they finally call her up, I walk up the window with her, and it's a window like you would see at a dangerous convenience store. And you could slide papers underneath the bottom, and there was like this metal thing right there where you could hear through it. And the girl is, the woman working behind the glass, she's asking the little girl stuff, you know, like, do you have a job, yada, 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 where are you going to be, yada, 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 asking me, are you going to provide for her? Absolutely. I've already got a 2-bedroom apartment attached to our home. She's going to be there to help my wife. She's going to help take care of the house. And the woman says, well, everything seems to be in order. She says, but of course we have to turn this down. I said, what are you talking about? Oh, well, we've already issued all the H-1B visas we're going to issue for the year. We issued those first 2 or 3 weeks of January. This is April, I think. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? Why don't you people at the front door, when you see you're here to apply for an H-1B visa, why don't they just say, I'm sorry, we've already taken all those. But no, you take our damn money. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but that's just the way it is. I said, just the way it is? I said, by God, now I'm an American. And this American consulate, and you people are totally unreasonable. I said, I get on the phone and I call down here. Matter of fact, I called down here the day before yesterday to double check that everything was in order. And all we had to do was come in here, pay the money, get her picture took, sign the papers, whatever, and she'd get her visa. The woman had the audacity to say, well, you could marry her. I'm going to cut that out. I shouldn't have said that. Especially my grandchildren are going to listen. That darn woman. Anyway, I said, I want to talk to somebody else. So I talked to a man a couple of windows down. He said, sir, that's just the way it is. I said, well, why are you taking our damn money? Well, you know, it's application fee. I said, but you're not accepting the applications. You're not processing the applications. Well, that's just the way it is. You've got a problem with it, talk to your congressman back home. Man, I ain't no telling how much money they rip off the Mexican people down there. Oh, man. I was ashamed. I was ashamed to be associated with them people. I really was. As innocent and sweet as this young girl was. And for me to have to tell her that they lied to us, that these Americans lied, it really bothered me. So anyway, after a bunch of tears and all that and I had told the woman, I says, you don't understand. I said, if I wanted to, I could pay a coyote and this young lady and her daughters will be across the border tomorrow morning. She said, I know. I said, here we are just trying to do it legal. Anyway, bunch of tears later out everybody, then I park company, I go my own way. And I stop at the tequila factory where they make the tequila, Don Nacho tequila. And I go tour the factory and they offer to buy my supper and all that kind of stuff. And we sat there and drank tequila till we couldn't see straight. And then we drove. Anyway, that was kind of an exciting trip. It was disappointing. And I was only there for a day or two. I started staying at my buddy's parents' house. And they lived right in downtown Jesus Maria. And you heard me talk about the plaza before. Well, I would get up early in the morning. I mean, with nice fresh air in the morning. And they lived one block off of that plaza. And when I'd walk out of their front door and hang a left and walk up this slight hill, and I'd turn right and there would be a tortilleria. A place that made those tortillas fresh. And you just smell, I mean the smell of fresh tortillas just wafted through the air. And I'm standing there watching them. And this guy invites me in because he knew my buddy. And he invites me and says, hey, here, have one. And he pulls this hot, fresh tortilla right off of the machine, sprinkles a little bit of salt in it, rolls it up and hands it to me. And he says, oh, it's better with cream. Anyway, he gave it to me. Man, have a tortilla fresh off the press is something else. And the only way you can duplicate it is at home, making your own with masa. But one thing they use is not just the bagged masa, which is basically finely ground up cornmeal, but they also use real corn that they mix in with it and grind it up themselves, and that's what gives it a little bit more of a texture. Anyway, so I have my tortilla as I'm walking down the street, and I get onto the plaza, and I turn left, and there's a produce market on one corner, and I'd go in there and get a banana or an apple, an orange, whatever I wanted for a piece of fruit for breakfast. And then I'd walk past the meat market and see the freshly killed chickens hanging up, and the beef that was killed yesterday hanging up in the meat market, and walk on past that to another corner that I call La Esquina de Mentirosos, the corner of the liars. It was where old men sat around drinking coffee. And I'd hang a left from there and go down the corner, and there was a bakery, Pana de Dia. And I'd go in there and get me some kind of a Mexican version of a donut, some kind of sweet bread. You know, us Americans, we like sugar. But I'd get me some kind of sweet roll, take it up to the liar's corner and sit down and have some coffee. And I do that every morning when I got up. It was just neat. But I remember one Monday morning after that festival where they sprinkle the confetti on a little girl's hair. The whole plaza would be covered in confetti. And I was up early in the morning and saw this old man, and he was using palm fronds, about, I'd say 6 or 7 feet long, and he was using them as a broom, maybe 5 or 6 of them together, and he was whoosh, just using them palm fronds as a broom to sweep that entire plaza. No vacuum cleaner, sweeping it with palm fronds. And if you went another block off of the square, there was it's kind of hard to describe, but it's just several little booth type places to eat, similar to a fair. You know, you go to a county fair and people have their little booths set up where they're selling their particular foods. But you go in there and there'd be tables and chairs to sit at, and you know, you get you a sandwich, get you a taco, get you torta. Oh, I love tortas. Tortas are just a sandwich, but it's made of their fresh made bread. And they put cream on that bread, and then your meat and avocado and whatever other fixings you want on it. And you get you a bottle of soft drink, sit there and eat it, and then ask for another one. But they never ask you for your money. Not until you had finished and ate and drank everything you wanted. Then you paid them. But they never took your money up front. They waited until after you ate. So it's kind of neat, kind of different. And of course by then you'd have to walk around the corner and go to the bathroom. And it's so funny. Baños, uno peso. Con papel, dos. If you just need to go in there to pee, it was a peso. If you need toilet paper, it was another peso. I looked down the little bitty pieces of toilet paper they wanted to give me, and I'd pull out 10 pesos. I said, give me the roll. This big old boy ain't gonna wipe that ass with those 3 little squares of toilet paper. Good God. Give me the freaking roll, lady. Oh, and they don't believe in throwing toilet paper in the toilet neither. That's something that took me some getting used to. You're supposed to throw your dirty toilet paper in a bucket, and then they come around and collect it and burn it, or do whatever with it, but burn the shit out of it, I guess. And anyway, that was pretty much my my second trip to Mexico. I just hung around and just walked the streets and saw the sights. Drove over to San Antonio de la Presa, Guanajuato. Buddy of mine knew that I was going, and he asked would I take some shoes and clothes to his daughters. He had 2 little girls, 2 or 3 little girls, cute as they could be. And I believe there were 3 of them. Anyway, he bought up a bunch of shoes and stuff for me to send to the kids, because one thing about Mexico, by God, something gets imported into Mexico, they ain't afraid to charge an import tax. They, they tax the shit out of stuff. You see stuff made in Mexico, dirt cheap. You see something made in China, you pay dearly for it. And it was just, you know, you couldn't buy no made in China cheap shoes like we do here at Walmart. So he had me take some clothes and shoes to his little girls, and it was very interesting for me to visit his parents. And if you listen to my video, watch my video about what I think about Mexicans that come to the U.S., this was my first time to meet that boy's grandfather that I took back home. But anyway, I met my friend's mother and father, took the shoes to his daughters, and met his wife, and I guess they told him that I sure did like to eat, because when I got there, his mama had me a bowl of carp soup. I'm not a big fan of eating a carp head that's looking at me in a bowl of soup. Not a great big fan of it. But I want you to know I ate it. Because I remember when I was a kid, if my grandmother invited you to sit down to eat, you by God, you sit down to eat. If you didn't, you was insulting her. You know, if somebody come by the house, you know, to just a kid, want to come play with one of the kids. Well, we're about to sit down and eat. You come on in here and eat, boy. It didn't matter who you were, a neighborhood kid. You come out there and ate because it was time to eat. Well, there wasn't no, oh no, thank you, ma'am, I've done ate. No, hell no. You're gonna eat. So, this carp head soup, I ate every bit of it. Well, not every bit of the head, but you know, I got the meat out. But I didn't eat the eyeballs, but I ate the water and broth and the vegetables. And then here she comes trying to give me more. Oh, hell no, 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 no. Here, let me give you another piece of fish. Oh, hell no. No, 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 I ain't having it, no thank you. Ooh, one's enough. Oh, God. You talk about poor folks. These are some of the folks I had my son meet. You walked into their home, the concrete was, you could tell it was just poured, roughly poured, and somewhat smoothed down. Somewhat. Like maybe it was just raked into place. And, you know, back drug as much as you could with a rake. You could tell that it hadn't had a 2x4 across it to smooth it, because a 2x4 is expensive. That's lumber. And there ain't no trees, and you know, for miles down there. So, you know, here in Tennessee, we build houses out of you know, lumber, because lumber's plentiful here. Down there, they use rock and stone and block and brick and concrete. So, I mean, I doubt if there was even a 2x4 on the property. It was mostly saplings, you know, young trees been cut down, or tree limbs. So the floor was somewhat rough. You could walk on it, you weren't going to trip on it, but it wasn't real smooth like we make. And the walls had a rough texture to them, because what they'll do is when they lay up their columns of concrete with rebar in it, they fill in between the columns with a brick, which is about, well, I'd say 6 inches wide, maybe 18 inches long, and about, oh, maybe about 1.5 inches thick. I don't think it was 2 inches. And they just, you know, slap the mortar and stack these bricks up in between these columns. And then to finish them, then they take mortar and flick it against the wall and smooth it off a little bit with a trowel. So the walls themselves weren't real smooth. They were textured. And textured stuff accumulates dust. It's kind of hard not to. And so you can just tell, you know, even the walls were dusty. I'm not faulting these people in the least. I'm just stating fact. This is the way it is down there. And so you got a rough floor, you got rough walls, and you look up, and the roof is made out of, like I said, saplings, you know, tree limbs about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches around that lay across there. And then there's 10, you know, sheet metal laid across that. And they may or may not pour concrete over it. And because it was up relatively high, it wasn't really hot in the house itself. Of course, they left the doors open and the windows open all the time. And had a little patio poured outside. I'll never forget, the lady had beautiful flowers, beautiful flowers. She done what she could to make her home pretty. And when you get out of the car and walk up to her home, it was just flowers everywhere. And just, you know, when you were just, it's like being slapped in the face with color. Because it's such a desert type area down there that, you know, is mostly just scrubby stuff and just a lot of tan colors. Much like a desert, because again, it pretty much was. But to get out of your car and just be hit in the face with all these brilliant colors was very, very refreshing. And although she had a gas stove in the kitchen, they never used it because the old man said gas was expensive. They had their kitchen out under another little old sheltered roof, and basically it's where you built a fire. And as neat as can be, I mean, when you see this stuff and realize this is the way things were done hundreds of years ago, it's just this rock and concrete mass, and it was built up about waist high. And they had laid around concrete and rock and stuff to where you could set a pot, or they may have even set some pieces of rebar to where you could set a pot on it. And they built a fire under that rebar. And to regulate the heat, the wood they used was, you know, like this long. And if they wanted more heat, they pushed the sticks under there further for more to burn. If they wanted to cool it off, they'd draw them sticks out. And they would make this concrete where it pretty much sealed fairly, I don't want to say tight, but pretty darn close to the size of the pot they would use. And then out the back was just an opening where smoke would naturally draw out. It was very interesting. I love this stuff, you know, seeing these other cultures. It just amazes me, the things that people do. And you talk about doing it cheap. Man, I thought I could do it cheap. These folks know how to live now. And the gentleman showed me his arsenal, this oven that they had built out of mud, pottery, clay, dirt, whatever, and rock, where they would bake their bread. And you have to look up Horno, H-O-R-N-O. Look one of those up, neat as could be, but this stuff was just handmade. And he showed me a cactus. And this cactus, he said, was probably 1,000 years old. It was huge, huge. So that was quite an experience, quite an eye-opener. When I got back to the town, you know, in the mornings you would see women that would sell their wares on the street, on the sidewalks and stuff. They'd go out and cut nopales, N-O-P-A-L-E-S, nopales, which is basically, I know you've seen them. They're a cactus with the flat leaves, for sake of anything better to say, but they're, you know, about as thick as your hand. And they would scrape the thorns off and then dice them up, and you cook them, and they taste just like green beans. It's amazing what people can learn to cook and eat based on where you live. And it was quite an adventure being down there by myself and not being able to speak the language best I could. And I got to tell you, after I was down there for that, I couldn't wait for my next trip. But I had to go to Iraq first. So I came home, and then I was asked would I be willing to go to Iraq, and I did. So I had to go to Iraq, and this is going to end this episode. And I'll tell you what happened when I got back from Iraq and decided to take another trip. I hope I ain't wore y'all out, but I got to tell you, it's quite an adventure down there. You get the chance to go to Guadalajara, Tonalá, or Tonalá. Tonalá is a city outside of Guadalajara where artists, all kinds of artwork, paintings and ceramics and just anything you think of that an artist would produce was there. Anyway, episode 3 would be when my wife goes to Mexico with me again. Y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. Y'all have a better tomorrow. Bye.
Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana, la casa del merengue y la casa de la bachata. Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana.